So this is the part where I wanted to explain what digital means to me, what I care about, what I believe in, my point of view. I've picked out 3 points here, which are many layered, and there's lots of ways you can dig below them, but I like to think that they cover all of the areas that I think are important to companies looking at building their digital strategy out. Number one, customer experience is in many ways the thing I focus most on, and you have to provide a good to great one for anyone to be bothered about your company, because there are other competitors out there that have a great one. So make sure it can be the best it can be and covers the brilliant basics. Number two is all about studying the usage of it to inform what you should spend money on to make it better. So the collecting of data, informing and improving the process is critical to a modern digital strategy. And the third part is technology these days provides you the data collected from the likes, micro interactions, requests that come from your users. So it's a conversation, and I think that's a new dynamic that historically may have been much more one way. Digital provides a two-way way of communicating with your audience and learning about what they like and what they don't like. I'm picking out a couple of examples of each one to illustrate the point. Number one, about the customer experience. This is a slide often used by Gartner, which has a big impact on me every time I see it. Klaas Fornell founded the American Customer Satisfaction Index in '94. It's actually now a $500 million hedge fund employing about 5 people, tracking the performance of the best CX companies, companies which have acknowledged great customer experience, are outperforming the market by this much. Look, it's nearly 5 times. It started out as the ACSI index, but he actually put his money where his mouth is and started putting money into a tracker. So people are outperforming the market by investing in customer experience. That's a pretty strong and powerful statement. And what it does is touches all the points I'm about to make. Leaders in this field provide, I think, who provide a seamless experience. They connect technology with the physical world and make sure that their people are trained to be up and ahead of the customer rather than being trained on the job by the customers. And they make things relevant, contextual, personal, and if not making things fun and engaging with a brand, at least they make sure they're not hellish, which I think is a strong indicator of someone getting it right. These brands get an outside view of what they're doing. They don't blow smoke up each other by saying it's all great when it isn't. They get a customer view, maybe a mystery shopper view. It's not about sugarcoating it to say you're doing well. You need honesty to say places where you're weak, how to act on it and make them better. And digital also is a world where, because things can be so easily updated out there in your distribution, it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be getting better. Good enough is good enough, and perfect ain't ever going to happen, ever. So just keep making sure it gets better. So that's one insight onto that. I told you I was going to pick a UK, European, and a German case study. So here was a John Lewis case study, which I think tells a great story in the round. I'm of a certain age with children. I don't have much time to shop these days online for saving 3%, 5%, whatever it might be. Something about this brand represents everything that's dear to me in my life, my family life, right? And that's got to be something. So they're a big retailer, department store, I guess you'd call it. You can get everything done there, and they do compete with online prices and have an online price matching promise, which I won't go into here. They probably don't match all the lowest of the low prices, but they're pretty competitive. But what they do is communicate their authenticity. I mean, one part of it is the people that work there are part of the ownership of the brand. So there's something in that. It doesn't feel too retail-y because you feel like you're getting advice rather than being sold to. Now, I don't like shopping, but I can get everything I need done in there in as relatively short time as possible. But the best thing about it, the customer service is one thing, but the customer service which extends to things that don't work or breaking and the way they just swap things out makes me think that I'll pay more. They make an effort on my behalf, and everyone in the UK knows it. They are definitely omni-channel, so booking, you go there to buy big things, big ticket items, whether it's TVs, computers, washing machines, fridges, beds, mattresses. You can get them delivered. They deliver, there's mobile, there's apps. There are ways to follow progress on keeping in touch with your delivery so that they cause you as minimum fuss in your life as possible. They're definitely sponsoring innovation and are seen to be looking at the future of the home and the family unit in the home and where technology plays. But I think they do the brilliant basics right, and it's communicated well across everything. Um, they're definitely looking at digital sales. They've done £1 billion turnover from online sales. Currently, 45% of online sales come through click and collect. So people go to the shop to get stuff. They can order items in store to be shipped to the home. So they're up on all of the latest retail developments. But it's their customer service and the way that connects physical with digital that I think they do really well, and is a reason that they have my loyalty. Now, in the German end of things, I picked out BMW, who have spent they do spend a lot of money digitally on cars and car configurations and having the best channel experience you can between your mobile technology and your cars and the health and the servicing and all of the things that you know about from an automotive. But they've actually studied the car buying experience as well, something I know well because Ness have many clients who work in the car buying experience area, the dealerships, the way that a big ticket item like a car is procured in this digital age. And it's changing. Young people are much more open to hiring cars than buying them. They definitely don't want to be hustled by a car dealer who knows more about cars than they do. And it's obviously an area that women feel particularly put off by sometimes aggressive male tactics, alpha male showing how much he knows about cars. So things are changing. People would like to own a car in many ways like they own a phone on a 2-year rolling contract where if it breaks, someone comes to fix it and they get a new one after 2 years if the payments are fixed. But anyway, the part I wanted to introduce here was the fact that BMW decided to go with the share, not sell, and picked out this product Genius, obviously influenced a little bit by the world's biggest phone manufacturer, who do have Genius bars. But this is all about someone who's an expert in the range of services from BMW and is more than happy and willing at the moment of procurement to share information, help people learn and understand a bit more about the wonderful options that help you become part of an aspirational BMW lifestyle, of course, but doing it in a way where they're advising, not selling. They're not rewarded by sales. And there's a no pressure explanation of the features available. It's actually increased the purchase of high margin options by 10 to 15% for them. But people feel like they're buying into the experience themselves, personalizing their dream, whatever it might be, but without feeling the pressure of having to buy. So I think BMW are doing the digital customer experience very well. Now then, we move on to the second part, the thing about being informed by data. This was just an interesting insight that a group of, this is Alibaba I'm trying to show here, and you'll see the relationship of the image to my point. A group of Alibaba data crunchers were looking at underwear sales because Alibaba, monitors and tracks millions of e-commerce transactions. They came across a curious trend, which is women in Asia who bought larger bra sizes also tended to spend more on e-commerce across the board. And they extrapolated that to show that the women that they're talking about here were older women. Who would have thought? There are patterns in these data you would never have guessed that. And they become more obvious when you are actively studying and looking for these patterns to find and reveal insights. Data is part of the technology story, of course. This phrase, show me you know me, means I've got expectations your technology is linked up, is working seamlessly behind the scenes to collect all the data on my touch points, know all my behaviors and previous history and things that I might be interested in, so you don't send me stuff I'm not interested in. We have lots of clients that I talk to, content publishing, financial services, looking to improve the quality engagement of what they send to people, because previously I think they just pumped out a lot of content and hope it stuck, the best that they could come up with. But now the data shows that you should learn from what you're putting out there and improve it as you go. There's that classic statement, isn't there? Half of all advertising works, but we don't know which half. Well, data now tells us what to do more of and what to do less of. If it was your household, you would know, wouldn't you, that when you're spending money on your gas or electric and you're spending too much of it, what to adjust, which behaviours to change so that you would bring that bill down. You'd care a lot more if it was your own money. And as soon as we do get smart metering, it's incredible, I think, the changing behaviours we're going to see. So my question to you all who's listening is, are you studying the data you're gathering about your own content as intently as you should be? The next point I wanted to make on data was to call out GE, who I think are a prime mover in this area. I mean, we've got that headline there that they've saved $50 million in development costs working out what not to develop by getting the feedback that things are not, the areas that are hot are not always what they think they are, and people are not necessarily going to engage, but you can use data, soft launches to study that. They've obviously gained somewhere in the region of $200 billion lately from selling their assets like GE Capital, and that is funding investment in new digital and data technology. They're betting big on digital and data at General Electric. And I followed the story of their Internet of Things, the Predix platform. They're all about selling big kits, which they've always done, but generating new service revenues by managing the masses of data that come in from that kit in the field. And I feel that all product companies are looking for ways now to generate recurring service revenues. And that, that's an incredibly interesting area. Worth saying, isn't it? I think that there's many business organizations struggling, switching from the management where you've spent all your life learning intuition and best judgment is something you worked on. And now you don't need that because the data tells you all the story. So no one cares about your best judgment. It's a new culture. Naturally, I think the perfect ground is somewhere in between, where managers with good judgment are understanding where the data truly does tell a story or where the data should be challenged, because it can't always reveal some of the patterns that are very human and irrational in nature. And it's not always the best business decisions or outcomes come out of it. And I like to think this new generation of IBM Watson looking for cancer cells, because it's been fed all the cancer x-rays in history, they do spot earlier and earlier where cancer cells strike and where they're in evidence, but it's teamed up with the very best cancer physicians and prognosticians out there in the world that the very, very best care is going to emerge. So it's a new world of automation working in concert with the best practitioners out there that I think is very exciting. Last thing on data, well, two parts to this last thing, but this part, is worth mentioning, areas that I think are inspiring. I'm a massive fan of Waze on the left there. We use it to get my children to school every day. It's a beautiful gathering of data with the phone as the node. It's something perfect that feels great to be a part of. There's nothing more exciting than seeing, there's a big red line of traffic up ahead, and it knows where I am, so it's giving me an alternative route. I guess the end game of that would be if everyone using it, there would be no red lines, because there'd be some sort of perfect traffic ballet where everyone was making optimal use of the road, which wouldn't be nearly so fun because I wouldn't find shortcuts, but it would enable a city to handle more traffic if everyone was using optimal routing to do that. But they are using innovative approaches to grow the company. And of course, $1 billion later, bought by Google, the three Israeli guys that founded it did pretty well out of getting value out of that idea. In a similar vein, I just wanted to call out Weather Signal, which I think is a beautiful idea as well. I think only available on Android phones at the moment, and using the sensors on board, the ambient thermometer, the barometer, the light meter, the humidity sensor, to build a live map of weather readings rather than car speed and density, and it's collecting atmospheric data to build that localized weather pattern. Fantastic insight into such local weather. What is it around my building? And it reminds me a little of that other IBM story, which says they bought the Weather Channel last year. They paid for the historic data set, 100 years of US weather data, and no doubt building personalized weather reports for particular businesses to understand where they should be investing. So two great initiatives using data from phones to create data sets that will have value. They're innovative and they're going to be able to monetize data, and they're worth knowing about. Last one, I just couldn't help but get this in because I love it so much. In my mind or in other minds, data is something difficult often to picture, difficult to remember. How do you spot the value in it? How do you see it? How do you understand it? But here's a simple story and a simple bringing to life of that. The fact here is that snake bites in Australia can be deadly but are relatively rare. There's a fairly unarguable statement, which you may or may not remember. But Australia has to sell its country to tourists and is actually home to lots of poisonous snakes. So just put that to one side. Second point here is the bottom two pictures. You may remember at the last World Cup, Luis Suarez had an incident allegedly biting Chiellini, the Italian defender. But of course, wasn't necessarily his first incident like that. There are a couple in history that are allegedly against him. So we combine those two states and come up with this. We could say snake bites in Australia are rare, or we could say if you are a professional soccer player, you are 3 times more likely to be bitten by Luis Suarez than being bitten by a deadly snake if you lived in the Australian outback for a year. I think that's quite memorable, and the first time I heard it, I thought, I'm never going to forget that. The third part I wanted to talk about was just this conversation element with your customers. The listening, the empathy, the understanding. What do you learn from studying the micro interactions, like buttons, abandoned baskets? Each one of them is a communication point in a conversation with you, the brand, and it should inform your roadmap. This dialogue with customers is a very digital phenomenon of our age. And as I said with John Lewis, it's about the digital and physical interactions combining to give their brand power. Do your staff know about both? Are they trained in both? Do they understand on the other side how the customer interacts with both? How do you cross-sell and upsell without freaking out your customers? Often abandoned baskets on an e-commerce site, you could phone them up 10 seconds later to say, hey, you didn't finish that transaction, but you would really upset some people who might think you were watching them in a very freaky 1984 way. There's been a lot of debate. It's a massive subject. I think some sort of way of dealing with it has emerged that's the standard, a kind of a 4-hour delay maybe to sending a message in a non-intrusive way about an abandoned basket. It is show me you know me, but it's with respect and some distance, that we're not following you by the second. So there's a decision that's made and it seems to work. Your story needs to fit in a modern narrative. BMW selling cars isn't enough, that they're great cars, that's not enough. That they must fit into the lifestyle and understand the personal needs of that customer. Being able to tell the right story to the right audience, knowing your audience, picking the best tale from your repertoire, that's all about the digital storytelling that brands need to work on, because there is a fine line between speaking and being heard, and it's communicating a message, which is the storytelling element of how you build a successful brand. I was privileged to work on this TV guide for a few years, which we built up from nothing to being a very successful brand in the UK with millions of users and young people engaged in the question, what is on TV now? It's a big brand and had a very successful audience. The bit I wanted to bring out here is the feedback, the conversation, the audience. It was phenomenal from the get-go that the people that were watching were using it to fulfill a need that they had, were passionate about it. The roadmap for the product was formed, informed, and almost driven by those ambassadors out there that were like, we need to do this, you're missing this way, the grid should prefer there rather than the list. When it goes to portrait, it should be this. There was never any shortage of great ideas that a majority of users could vote on or get behind or show willingness that they would like their product to be informed. It became almost owned by the users, and that was a wonderful way to build a product out when they were getting positive feedback and better feedback on how to make it better. So that was the start of my journey in what I think needs talking about in this context, which is about the emergence of platforms. And while it's easy to talk about app stores, eBay, Amazon, I just wanted to touch on a few today, which I find incredibly interesting and still a relevant touch point for how people are understanding their audiences, and how a platform is a modern digital phenomenon, moving from a pipeline business, which is making stuff to sell to customers, to becoming a central hub of interest where you make money from both sides of a transaction. You let innovation happen because people with the mind to improve the service will do it and maybe find other partners within the ecosystem. And I just wanted to touch on all of these because I love their stories. Etsy started in 2005, 10 years ago now, for artisans getting together. Upwork is the latest incarnation of finding freelance people out there in the world to get work done. Juno Medical, that's an interesting one, allows patients searching for procedures across hospitals and countries and get a price. And there's something of an immersive experience in there, like a window into each hospital. And of course, that's what estate agents are trying to do now with virtual reality, to save you time, to reduce the list, reduce the number of places you visit. GitHub, of course, for finding code and developers. That's a great platform that is close to my heart. Incentive is a wonderful story. I urge you to visit their site, cracking massive global problems. Some of them are altruistic and of benefit to society, but the challenge is set by big companies and offering big rewards. And a little part of me always loves the story of Groupon. Maybe they couldn't quite protect their business model, but they did mess with the traditional model of supply and demand, and it was exciting when that got going. So platforms are here to stay, and what your role is in a platform ecosystem economy is an interesting question to ask yourselves. And the last one I just put in here for fun was, doesn't really exist this image, but it's a nice one. This is Starbucks. Starbucks is a brand. Starbucks has been very successful. Starbucks is a digital leader. They do well with mobile and gifting and digital marketing. So that, they're a leader in the field that I study. But they've got an interesting avenue. How do they get into Italy? Italy's a place where there's a completely different behaviour. A euro buys you an espresso that you consume in a bar in 3 minutes. And the coffee's great, but you're off and out and on with your day. This is a live experiment because it's June in 2016 and Starbucks are just cranking it up in Italy because they're determined to make an impact there. Will Italians spend 5, 6, 7 euros for a coffee that's not quite as good as the one next door for €1? Finding a workplace where they get Wi-Fi and a comfy chair and some music, will they like that? Who's to say? Lots of people think they won't, but I think a lot of people are going to give it a try. So keep your eyes peeled for how Starbucks do in Italy. I mean, McDonald's haven't given up in the home of slow food. They may still lead the way in loyalty, gifting, and app of the week and digital footprint, collecting data all over the US. Some great success stories from Starbucks, but will they make it in a market that is not necessarily the most welcoming? And will they, in the end, be able to get that service revenue, that loyalty revenue from their physical product of coffee? Because Starbucks, in many ways, is like General Electric on that one. We shall see.